Pablo. That's the nothing personal word of the day. It's a Samson sit down. Thank you for joining us for these mailbags and sit downs while I'm away. Lucky enough to have my friend and now someone I work with, Pablo Torre, back for you win, Pablo. You're the first person. This is your second Samson sit down.
Wow. And my first in-person Samson sit down. This is a dynamic that we'll have a lot of in New York, I think, as we construct our Meadowlark offices, unless we both hate each other in the next 40 to 45 minutes.
I would expect that not to happen, but I thought you were going to say in the next 40 to 45 days, which clearly would be from your mouth to God's ears. We don't know what's going on. What we do know.
Is this wood?
It's definitely not wood.
Nah.
This is Meadowlark. We're in Miami.
Yep.
What I love is that we had talked about both joining Meadowlark, and we had been talking about it for a long time in our heads of what it would be like to work with Dan, what it would be like to have a show in the universe, and what it would be like to do it out of a New York studio.
Yes.
And everything was on schedule, ready to go, except the New York studio was not quite ready. But you've taken charge. Do you feel like you can build a stadium now? Because are you single-handedly doing the studio?
I feel like I should be wearing a hard hat at all times at this point because I've been in construction mode. But no, for a long time, and I guess that would mean like a couple of months, I did worry that it was just me wearing a hard hat constructing a studio. But no, we've been assembling a crack strike force of people in New York, David, who are helping me do something that I don't think the listeners of certainly your show and undoubtedly Dan's show actually appreciate, which is that when you're launching a new show from nothing, everything gets a little personal.
And you are clearly launching, I want to make the audience understand, you are launching a new show from nothing.
From nothing, from a New York studio that at this moment does not exist. I hope you exist, by the way. We've been hanging out in Miami, and your cough has been worrisome to me. I worry about you as part of our ongoing bond here.
So just so you know what's been happening for the last few weeks is we've been doing Nothing Personals. We've been doing the Levitard show, and I came in sick, and I've not been able to get better because there's no sunlight.
You've been fighting through sickness in this
petri dish.
That's a generous scientific term for what just feels like a bunch of people who are ill in a room together.
Do you have a checklist of what we need in the New York studio? Because Nothing Personal is going to be filmed. Coca's coming to New York.
Yes.
We're all going to be in the New York studio.
Hung out with Coca, had my staff as embryonic as it is, hang out with Coca, all loved each other. So the checklist of team building, friendship, big check mark, but then it's like software. And David, I have been informed that talent, I say this with scare quotes at all times, but talent is not normally sitting in meetings about software. But I have been in meetings about software. I've been in meetings about workflow, the boring shit that will not at all be discussed on my show once it exists. But to get to the point at which I can no longer talk about it, I have to perpetually talk about it because I'm trying to build something that lasts. And I don't want to just bang this drum over and over again, that Meadowlark has never built before.
I sat in meetings during the building of the ballpark where sometimes I felt like a person sitting in on a meeting amongst surgeons talking about vascular surgery. So imagine sitting in a meeting where they're talking about rebar and foundation and things that you have to do when you're building a ballpark, where I needed people around me who knew what they were doing and I needed to trust them. And they needed to translate. I assume you're in the same position because they can talk software all they want. What do you know?
I have felt Samsonian insofar as I am the guy sending emails that don't need to be sent, but I send them anyway because I am concerned that no one else will check this box about, hey, this black room that is not at all treated for sound, that is deeply echoey, we're going to like put foam in here, right? And I get back a sarcastic email, which is deserved because I'm being you in this case. And yeah, I am trying to check boxes that others are apparently seemingly already checking.
I found it reasonable to make sure that we had bases. I believe
we got bats.
Anybody?
We got bats here
because to have a studio, it's your name, it's your show.
Yes,
and you made the decision to do this with Meadowlark again, starting from zero. which may not have been your best negotiation
No,
ever.
no. And I feel like some people are already wondering, like, look, we all made podcasts over the pandemic. We're all making podcasts all of the time. You put on your camera on your laptop and you hit record, and congratulations, you are a podcaster. And what we're trying to do is more ambitious than that. It's trying to build a studio. It's trying to build a show that comes out 3 to 4 times a week, a show that takes on both the ambitions of pre-production with musical scoring and editing and narrative sensibility, as well as a show that can handle just a hang. Like, I sit down here with you today, not really sure what we're doing, but I love that. And I sample that every time I'm in Miami. So I'm trying to build a show that does both of these things, scratches both sides of my brain, as it were. And that requires more than just, here's a webcam, here's a USB mic, plug it in. Like, we're building a company.
We didn't even get that when Coke and I started. We didn't even get a microphone.
Well,
I think it was,
well,
hey, turn the switch on, guys, because we hear that there's people listening to Nothing Personal.
Well, you guys are, in fact, like a show in a box. It's you and you and Coca.
Justin Timberlake?
Yeah.
Am I Timberlake?
The visuals on this are horrifying. But yeah, you guys do it in a way that allows you to take it wherever you want, which is
portability,
jealousy inducing, because what I'm trying to do is plant roots and water that, again, torturing the metaphors here, but like, yeah, watering the tree, allowing it to sprout and oxygenate the air and provide shade in this New York office that is full of, and I assume this is not appreciated either in Miami, full of other human beings that are not characters on the Dan Le Batard show or even Nothing Personal yet, but are like other people that are trying to make stuff that will make this company a real company.
Are you concerned about being Shel Silverstein and the Giving Tree? Like, do you picture yourself, hey, it's just a stump. I've given you all I got, but you can now sit on me if you'd like. Because I feel like that's the kind of person you are, that you'll be company man. And all of a sudden you'll turn around and you will have built this behemoth. You will have gotten a studio done, which is absolutely amazing.
I hope
launched a show, helped guide the Le Batard show, and then you turn around and you're a stump.
I fear that someone will count the rings inside of me and they'll be disappointed by how long this thing actually lived for. I'm glad that you're just validating that I'm not, MLM. We discovered this on the show, also happens to stand for multi-level marketing scheme. I'm glad that you're validating that at Meadowlark Media, that I am not just, scheming up stuff. I'm actually trying to put stuff into the ground.
Which is pretty noble, admirable, and has a great chance. It's one of those things where no true fiasco started as a quest for mere adequacy.
That's right. That's right. I, so far, am resembling the path of someone trying to launch like a spaceship. And
you don't want it to be a submersible.
Ideally.
Shout out to Cameron Crowe, because that's his line from a movie that no one's seen that I love called Elizabethtown. And with Orlando Bloom. Have you even heard of Elizabethtown?
Love Almost Famous. Love Cameron Crowe. Never heard of Elizabethtown. New Jersey? Is that the reference?
I believe, yes, and I believe it's his best movie.
Wow.
And Orlando Bloom and Kirsten Dunst. And it is about, and Alec Baldwin actually plays a like Phil Knight sort of character. And Orlando Bloom develops a sneaker. The sneaker goes bust. And it's what happens to him as a person when his entire life was based on building a product from scratch. He tries to do it. He unveils it, and all of a sudden it takes a big crap.
So this is a concern. I come to Miami and I fill in for Dan, and I say this adjective to you when we work together on Dan's show, and I hope people take it the way that I mean it. I say that it's easy, not because it's easy to do, to sit in Dan's chair. It's really hard and it's complicated and you're balancing all sorts of things. And I don't want to belabor that, but you get it. It's easy because it's not constructing something in the way that I'm pouring my identity into it. It is something that I can do for fun. And yes, it's more tonnage, it's more hours, there are more moving parts, but it's not that. And so I am blessed by hours of relief in which my ego is in something else, because left to my own devices in the negative space of nothing. Look, David, when I left ESPN as a full-time employee, I was hosting ESPN Daily. I had hosted almost 700 episodes of it, 5 days a week. You know the grind. Of course you do. So I left that and needed to fill that empty space in my head, in my imagination, with stuff. And I had been filling it with the designs of this sneaker, spaceship, tree, multi-level marketing scheme.
It could be great.
That might be great. Might. Yeah, I again.
Here's the thing about you're looking for wood.
Yeah, that looks like that's fake.
That's balsa wood. Yeah, that's at best
plastic. Anyway,
we'll talk about your show a little later, but I want to make sure that people listening to this and watching what you're doing, there was some misunderstanding that when you first got to Meadowlark, you had disappeared a little bit because you had been on Dan's show for a bit and then were gone.
Yes.
And that was just bad PR by you because you were not disappeared at all. People don't understand it's not just a microphone and a camera that you're putting on, that you are building something and you want to hit the ground running in a place which in and of itself is a minefield of crap, dude, within another company.
So I felt, I mean, this is I compliment to you. I have never been more staggered by what it means to have to manage people. And I have a small staff, but we have a staff, part freelance, part full-time, and vetting those people, building a locker room. I find myself lapsing into sports cliches a lot, which is troubling as the guy whose whole brand is transcending sports cliches.
They're very handy.
But they're handy because I'm talking about a locker room and chemistry and culture and all of these things that start as, that's bullshit, actually end up manifesting in ways that remind me of what it means to lead a team.
You're going to have to be careful. And I'll one word of advice to someone who's managed people for decades. There comes a time where you have to evaluate when there's a slump happening.
Yeah,
you have to assign various blame percentage-wise. That I hate saying percentage-wise. 4/869. You have to assign blame. Is it to you? Is it to the show?
Sure.
Is it to the people? Is it to the concept? Are you not getting the right PR, the right marketing? And when you're managing people, the last person who you are going to assign blame to is you. You'll give yourself the smallest percentage because that's the ego and that's the C-suite, which you are off camera. You're running your own company within Meadowlark.
Yes.
Are you ready to make the decisions required that aren't software related? They're not foam related. They're how do I make the best show I can make every day? Do I need more people, more resources, different people?
Yeah,
that moment is going to come.
Oh, I aspire to be clear-eyed when it does. But for me, I have already failed one test because you're right that the PR around what I've been doing
so bad
in reality has been deliberate and bad. So deliberate. So I'll start with bad. Bad in the sense that I have to explain it now. And you pointed out accurately that I haven't been explaining I'm doing X and Y and Z. Everything I've said to you already, I have not said publicly. And it's been deliberate because the way that my brain works is not only do I not want to jinx things, I want to set the bar publicly on the floor and then lightly hop over it. I'm not here to proclaim I hope that's clear, by the way. That is both deliberate and also genuine. I have not figured shit out, but I have a plan. And we're going to find out if this plan works.
I don't like it. I don't like planning for mediocrity.
I'm not planning for mediocrity.
Why are you saying that you would just want to step over the bar?
Simply because to proclaim that the bar is here is to indicate that I have already figured out the stuff that is in between the bar being 5 feet off the floor and on the ground. And I'm just telling everybody, Meadowlark Media should be evaluated by a limbo bar that is subterranean. It should be at the mantle of the earth. That is what I want people to expect so that when I lightly hop over it,
you will proclaim victory and a torn hamstring.
It will feel like I've been launched into space successfully.
You're not nailing this point because the essence of the bar on the ground theory is that it also puts a limit as to how high the bar can ever go.
So
Because
this is an interesting
it's spatial.
psychological counterpoint I had not considered. Proceed.
I would like you to consider the fact that when you set the bar high and then you get over it, you are looked at in a much different way in terms of loyalty, in terms of revenue, than if you set the bar low and then get over it with room to spare. Then people question, wow, he did not believe in himself. Why would I believe in him, either financially or with my time? And what we're bidding for in our business is time, people's time.
Do you remember Susan Boyle?
Is she the woman who did the commercials or?
American Idol,
Yes.
right? I believe her name is Susan Boyle. I want to Susan Boyle this shit.
Is that the same as the Jamaican bobsled team? Is that the equivalent?
I would love to Cool Runnings this shit as well.
Eddie the Eagle? Was he the ski jumper?
Remember? I believe so.
Okay.
Did that one go well?
No. Do you want it to go well? I can't figure out.
No. So the Susan Boyle thing is, as much as I do want to establish the depth of my ambition, and believe me, anybody who has met me in real life over the last
cosign
5 months has heard me articulate in ways that are too detailed what I'm trying to do. I've fallen into a rabbit hole is not a sufficient metaphor anymore. It's a colony. It's an underground city that I have been sort of like contemplating of various obsessions, concerns, anxieties, plans, etc. But the Susan Boyle thing is, it's American Idol. The public podcast downloaders are YouTube viewers are Simon Cowell. And out comes Susan Boyle, and they're like, oh, this old lady, nothing. She got nothing. And this dumpy lady blows them away.
With like butterflies coming out of her mouth, with her music and her voice.
Revelatory.
But you're not Susan Boyle. You're already coming from a place where you were doing smart, good shows that were very popular. And you're already still doing things on ESPN. So help me again with how you're Susan Boyle, who no one had heard of prior to her walking on the stage.
I felt like the last 3 months have been me Susan Boiling. I'm just like trying to, I'm not out on center stage. I'm whatever I'm doing, I want people to actually wonder on some level, if they wonder, like, what?
Hold on.
Because what's going to happen, David, what's going to happen is, and this is where I'm by even discussing this, I am violating the principles I'm describing. But what's going to happen is that, I'm going to come out with some shit, and I want people to be like, how the fuck are they doing this? Because for me, the degree of difficulty of what we're trying to make is significant. And I am proud and confident that, we're going to Fosbury flop this shit, which is, again, a troubling verb. But I just want people to know that Fosbury flopping was an actually revelatory way of high jumping.
The thing about Meadowlark, which people may not understand, as the overall company that has the Dan Le Batard show, has another show, Nothing Personal is there.
Yes.
Off the Wall is there.
Off the Looking Glass.
Off the Looking Glass, and the new show with the meme.
Oddball.
I just mixed up two shows.
Just made.
I don't know. Did I make it one show?
You made someone at Meadowlark Michael Jackson.
That is not good.
Well,
there are many candidates. What Meadowlark does with its content, whether it's scripted, whether it's unscripted, as building a media company, having you as a part of it was a crucial piece to their puzzle. And I started a few moments before you did. And I don't know if you're privy that although maybe you are because of the ease in which you were onboarded, is that your ability to set the bar high, whether it's sitting in Dan's chair, whether it is figuring out whether the walls are padded, or whether it is coming up with your own show. The reason why you're here is the belief that you can do it. And what I've heard from some executives at Meadowlark is, wow, it'd be nice if he believed in himself as much as we believed in him, because you're boiling it so well that there's a concern. Oh no, is this a problem? And so you've put me in a position, knowing that it's not a problem, that this is your theme, to actually have to say to those who give me that objection, don't worry, we're all okay here.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is the thing about a stage to me, is that I don't like so as a fan of sports, I love a good ring walk. You know, when boxers will walk out to the ring and they have music, they have the entourage, they are lifted, processed like a pharaoh. Love that shit as a fan. Hate it as a person. As much as I am supposed to be the person who is waving Meadowlark's flag every step of the way towards the ring, what I really want to do is as I've described, which is show up and knock some shit out.
Wait, but you want to be the one who comes up through the stage.
Yes.
You get lifted up. I think Michael Jackson may have started a concert that
I'm
way.
Michael Jackson,
or
it
two.
turns out.
You want to just be lifted up and then you're there.
And then the show fucking starts. Look, man, it's funny when we talk about this entirely in terms of PR, right? Because what I am trying to do is care entirely about this thing that's going to launch, not about the interim.
It's tough because you are in a position where you are looked at as someone who should care about a lot of things.
Sure.
And I think about that too, as being formerly in baseball and now doing this show and having this platform and the responsibility that I feel every day to talk about issues. I love the dumb stuff and I also love the serious stuff. And it is unique in our business. And I can say this tooting your horn. It's unique to be able to travel in both circles. And both circles are important and they're very, very different.
They are.
They're not, there's very little actually interlap of the circles of serious versus dumb journalism and joking versus serious issues.
The high and the low.
So you're looked at as someone, as an opinion influencer, an opinion maker, an opinion haver. When things come up like what the Supreme Court a month ago with affirmative action, you are out there as a Filipino American. I can call you that. That's I assume you call yourself that. That's a fact. Where things that happen in the Philippines, you are, hey, what does Pablo Torre think about this?
Sure.
When things that happen in the Asian community, what does Pablo Torre think about this? When you watched the Supreme Court change its makeup and tilt conservatively, before even the public understood what that meant in terms of Roe v. Wade, what it meant in terms of affirmative action, did you realize that you were about to be on the clock? That there were issues that were coming down the path that you were going to have to explain to people?
Yes. And I have been also delinquent in not actually, again, getting on a platform and pointing out that like I have insight into all sorts of this stuff. Right. So for instance, like my interest in college was to go to law school, was to eventually become a Supreme Court clerk, which a number of my friends wound up being because they are brilliant and successful. And I'm glad that inside of that institution, there has been a pipeline of people going to schools like Harvard and so on and so forth.
You can say it. Just say yeah.
No, but
you won't even say it. Will you say Wisconsin?
I love Wisconsin.
Do you just say Harvard? When you list the good schools, do you stop at Harvard? That is pompous.
I don't even think about what I haven't said because it's just obvious that when I say that, I'm hopefully clearly joking.
No, not clear at all. So when you're listing schools,
Harvard,
you,
dot.
Everyone else is dot.
Yeah, there are lots of dots in there though. Dot.
Okay. I happen to think that Yale, Wisconsin are not dots. I happen to think that Harvard's not one either, and I'm okay enough. The board I sat on at Yale had a Harvard professor on it.
Very good.
How great is that? He had gone to Yale and is now a Harvard professor and sits on a board at Yale.
I hate how insufferable this has become. But to answer your question, like I have thought quite a bit about the Supreme Court. I've visited, I've shot hoops on their basketball court. I've gotten a tour of that place. They have the highest court in the land. It's an amazing
It's inspiring,
thing.
Isn't it?
It's inspiring.
Have you been there for an argument?
No, never have.
It's incredible.
No,
it's absolutely incredible.
I say all of that to say that I nerd out on this shit, right? And so, yeah, all of this, like since high school, I've been reading Supreme Court decisions. I have been studying and have certainly studied less since I did this as my profession. But yeah, when affirmative action came around, for instance, I read and watched with not just academic interest, but personal interest.
But also understanding that it would be part of, you would be looked to for an opinion, or did you do it solely out of self-interest?
Solely because I needed to know how I felt about this. Like, these are not simple issues. They are complicated.
Can
If they
you
make the Supreme
explain?
Court, by definition, they are complicated. Anybody who suggests otherwise is being dishonest.
I would like to introduce this topic, and we've talked about it on Nothing Personal, and I try to tackle issues like this, and I try to not give my opinion. I want people to be informed on both sides and then to come to their own conclusions. And I think that information, to me, is the king. It is the key. It is the alchemy that makes the world spin properly. And when information, bad in, I had an expression, bad in, bad out. If I get bad information about something going on with the building of a column that will hold up a roof, I'm going to say, sure, that column will hold up the roof. And then the roof comes tumbling down. David, you should have known. No, I couldn't have known that. So getting information to people about the Supreme Court, its importance, how politicized it is, why that could matter. And then we get a case like affirmative action, which to me has become maybe the single most misunderstood and controversial opinion that has come out as a result of the switch to a conservative justice majority. When you are reading the opinion, do you separate yourself as Asian, as Filipino, or do you read it because this case is about affirmative action and people are saying it's over, no more affirmative action, and then you were on the plaintiff's side?
Well, yeah.
You, meaning the collective.
Yes.
You
My racial demographics
was on the people. When you tell people that, it blows their mind.
Well, this is how I read it. I read it as an Asian American, not simply because I see everything through the lens of race. No, I can take the glasses on and off, right? Like, I try to understand the world from all sorts of perspectives in a real, genuine way. That sounds trite, like a locker room cliche. I mean it. But I opt into those glasses here because when you read the decision through the lens of an Asian American perspective, in which the case has been brought by Asian American plaintiffs, you are staggered by how little Asian Americans are mentioned in the dissent.
So not only in the dissent by Sotomayor, this went across. If you look at what Justice Roberts wrote in his majority opinion, and you actually break it down, what people are most concerned about is themselves. And I'm okay to say it. I hope you're okay to hear it.
I am okay with human nature being fundamentally selfish,
That is,
unfortunately.
How will this impact my ability to either get a job, get into school, my kids' ability? What do we do? What's the workaround here? Was a big part of this Supreme Court decision. It gave the path to the workaround.
Oh,
Justice
100%.
Roberts gave it. And I do not agree with everything that any Supreme Court justice says. But in this case, I did agree with Justice Roberts and what he was doing because he gave the way to tell everyone it's going to be okay.
So I should be clear about what I mean when I say that I read this as an Asian American and noticed things that were disappointing as an Asian American, because you're raising a point that I want to get to right off of this. Because what I noticed, David, was simply that it didn't feel like enough of the Supreme Court, and certainly the news media and the commentariat and so forth, America, it didn't feel like they even thought about the plaintiffs because it immediately switched to how does it affect Black people, African Americans, white people, whoever they were. And it was in that way poetic because the entire case brought against affirmative action was about a demographic of people, Asian Americans, who had been erased. And even worse than that, reduced on the merits because they were disposably boring, basically. Like at Harvard, I went to Harvard again, just to reiterate how insufferable I am. Like, it is undeniable that there was a bias against Asian American applicants on the level of this personal score. The personal score being the thing that was the justification for why Asian American applicants rated lower in the admissions process, which resulted in people with great academic credentials being admitted at a rate that was lower than other groups. But more than that, it was a case of, to me, like, not something that I wanted to celebrate. Like, I didn't read this case, even though the Asian Americans won and said, yes, we fucking did it. Like, yeah, no, that's not how I reacted to this. I believed that affirmative action was essentially a flawed, deeply flawed system of redress that was not really redressing the actual ills it sought to solve, the actual systemic racism that had resulted in the descendants of slaves being given a real handicap, not just in American society, but in all the ways that then trickled down to college admissions.
Resulting, what affirmative action was supposed to do was redress that.
Yes.
It was meant to actually acknowledge what had happened and say, now we're going to change it and make it so it is still affirmative action, but now reversed.
Yes, affirmatively helping this demographic in particular, not the only one, but just the one that is so clearly in America disadvantaged historically in ways that are undeniable as well. And what it did instead was create a system that did not actually elevate those people. It elevated boxes that got checked to make it seem like those people were being helped, that those injustices were redressed, but instead elevated, wealthy kids, the children of immigrants from African countries.
First gens.
And by the way, I'm a first generation American. I'm not here to say that, look, my point is simply that it didn't do what it set out to do, period. And then when it went away, it wasn't like, oh, thank God, everything's fixed.
Now it's going to be fine.
Because my view on what college admissions should be is more complicated. I mean, I believe that college is a place where an admissions department should be crafting a class.
They're casting directors.
They
view themselves that way. Actually.
Yes. So I worked not in any sort of decision-making capacity, but I worked as a file clerk for the Harvard admissions department in college as a freshman for a semester.
Did you see applications?
I needed a job. Yeah, of course.
Did you have people call you, say, hey, can you pull my application?
No, because I was somebody who abided by the rules.
Oh, that's no help.
I had all of this access and did nothing with it. I mostly was like, ooh, what did Ryan Fitzpatrick get on his SATs? We'll never reveal it, but I know
Matthew Broderick in War Games. That's
the
what
most
you're using the
sad
computer?
Matthew Broderick. But anyhow, so I did that, and then I did some interviews for Harvard as an alum, in which the soft factors of a personal evaluation are meant to be a thumb on the scale. I don't do that anymore. I might in the future. I don't know.
What was your rate of acceptance? Do you happen to recall?
It wasn't high because I did it in Manhattan and all of these kids.
It's low. I mean,
oh yeah, it's a meat grinder.
You're doing it, and there's no.
Everyone's impressive.
And you write a letter after you do the interview
about how impressive they are.
Exactly. And they're getting letters. It's coming into minor league baseball and saying, hey, I can hit home runs. So can every single person in this locker room.
So this informs my view on what college should be, which is that there are lots of kids who can do the work. And so my belief academically is you must set a bar that is rigorous and high, but above which we should be prioritizing other things as well. So once you can establish that these kids who get in can do the work, can hang academically, then you need to craft a class that helps prepare these kids for life. And that means being a diverse class, racially, geographically, socioeconomically, which is such a profound, and again, this is now getting into something that people are familiar with probably, but it's true. Socioeconomics underrepresented as a concern inside of these admissions meetings.
When you are putting together a class, and this is what I was trying to get people to understand, and you touched on it. It's the casting. They're casting a show,
a reality
year.
Show.
It's a that's
is
it.
The most competitive, cutthroat reality show in American history.
Ask the people trying to get on Survivor. There are people who have, and I'm not just saying this, I got on Survivor. There are people who have been applying for 20 years.
These people have been applying since before they were conceived.
But you only get to apply once.
Yes.
You only get to apply once to Harvard. Other shows you get to apply over and over and over, which makes this so tough to do.
And also, if you're on Survivor and you've been a super fan your whole life, it's probably unlikely that your parents were hoping. It's unlikely that your parents came to America for you to be on Survivor. And so to me, again, the Asian American lens, right? My parents came to America for me to get an education.
But not at Harvard.
But that was their dream. Certainly.
When they came to America, their dream was Harvard.
It wasn't like
versus Yale or Wisconsin or Stanford.
Certainly not Yale. No, I didn't get like a bonnet that said future Ivy Leaguer, but they wanted me to get the best possible education. And so my entire grade school, high school, college, all the way through was about how important it is to study, to get good grades, because that was...
Would you have disappointed them if you didn't get into Harvard?
No, but it was such a source of pride because it meant that we made it. They came from
and now look
another,
at you.
And now I'm fucking disappointing Meadowlark media executives and my parents.
Every step of the way.
Completely.
You went to Harvard, and this is what you do in a zipped-up sweatshirt.
Just Susan boiling it.
Schleppy.
Susan boiling it.
Trying to get over a bar that's on the floor. And your parents are saying, do they say? Actually, what was their reaction when you joined Meadowlark?
Oh, they were confused. Dan was the guy who had made fun of the dress code of my wedding on his show. And at the wedding was the... I mean, look, in all seriousness, confused insofar as they were like, is this a good idea? Like, you work at ESPN. And I said, well, I can do TV at ESPN still. I can do PTI around the horn, but the future is in digital, and I can partially own this company.
Did they feel like you had transferred from Harvard to Wisconsin? Was that sort of was you really
There
worried?
was a University of Phoenix aspect to this.
Interesting.
Yeah. But look, the reason I give that whole background is because I came to America carrying this mandate of go and try your best. And the path to success in American life is through education. And so too has been the mission statement of countless. And this is where some aspect of the stereotyping is true of Asian Americans. So too is it true of countless Asian Americans who saw education and getting good grades and acing the SAT as not just useful, but existentially significant.
But how tough is it for you when schools are taking away the SATs as a marker, or some of the places where maybe the extra studying, the extra ability, the extra intelligence, whatever it is, advantage you thought, the playing field in theory is being leveled. COVID was used to expedite that leveling of the playing field. How do you react to that, both as an Asian American and as a spokesperson for everything else you represent?
Yes. So look, I don't love the SAT. I studied my ass off for it, took it twice in an attempt to get the best score I could, took it as seriously as humanly possible. I did not think at the time or now at any point that it was like the perfect or even the ideal way of measuring intelligence.
No one ever asks you, hey, what'd you get in your SATs?
I hope not.
Do you know what you got in your SATs?
I don't remember specifically.
I do not either.
Whatever. Good enough, right?
Good enough.
And so the point of like the SAT to me was not finally a fair, objective standard. It was just the thing you had to take. I didn't have affection for it. I hated it, but I just knew I had to destroy it. And so for me, it going away, great. I just hope that it's replaced by a rigorous standard that does not allow the gaming of it in ways that the SAT was also, to be clear, quite gameable. Prep
all
courses,
rigorous
all
standards are gameable. So your desire and wish here, you have a problem right from the jump.
So this speaks to the imperfections and the impossibility of making a truly ideal casting decision.
It can't happen.
Because there is no mathematical standard that everyone will abide by or agree on. There is no criterion that is, like, to me, I guess, publicly obvious. It's going to, and that's the whole point of an admissions department, right? It's not just that you're assembling a class like a reality TV show cast. You're arguing amongst yourselves on the committee tooth and nail for the kids you think are most deserving. It's supposed to be
that actually happens.
contentious.
It's like a fraternity almost, where they put your name on the board, and if you get tomatoes thrown at you.
Oh yeah,
And
dude.
that's how reality shows are cast. I was a part of casting of Survivor. I watched how they did it. It's unreal how they put their show together, and you don't get it as a contestant, much like as a student when you apply. Whatever you put in the color bar, whatever your essay says, whatever travails you've had to go through, you don't know if you're pressing the right button at the right moment for that particular school. There's no way to know.
Yeah, and you're arguing, and it reminds me too of a front office, right? Like you're arguing about draft picks. Who's going to make it? Who's worth it? Who's better than you think? Who deserves a shot that their resume does not suggest?
And you may get a president or you may get Pablo.
Correct.
So this is, and you both people came in to Harvard with the same expectation. Dude. President, Pablo. We don't know which. It's the draft.
I mean, in my class, by the way, which speaks to the difficulties of like what's going to change next, right? Legacy admissions. I went to school with the descendants of literal presidents. I was classmates with people who are running currently for president. Like, this is not just a figure of speech. It is actually the case. And so this is why I take, so this larger question of like, but isn't this institution, Harvard University, like all of these institutions, aren't they just rackets, right? That are like trumped up ways of
pun not intended.
Trumped up ways of, pun intended there, of keeping power inside of a closed circle that perpetuates itself and charges insane prices and actually mostly exists for the enrichment of itself. And to that I say, that's a good take.
It's a good take, but it's actually not. You know this. That's not exactly how it works.
No, but
the people who pay full price, and I'm sensitive about this because people misunderstand Harvard and Yale specifically. You don't graduate Harvard and Yale with debt. If you can't afford tuition, it's paid for you.
Yes.
And so people who come in first generation, and I mean first generation, no college degrees in the family, from countries outside of the US, you don't walk out with $200,000 of debt that has to be paid back by Biden 10 grand at a time.
Robust and that's financial aid programs. They don't have academic scholarships, as all Ivy Leaguers like to point out all the time. But they do have
need scholarships are way better.
And that's the most important part. And so I commend them for if your household as an applicant makes X, I forget what the standard is now, but if it's below that, you pay nothing. And that is exactly what it needs to be. But that's why the question of who gets in is so imperative, is because
there have to be people who get in who can pay full, and to finance the people who get in who can't pay full. And then you use part of the endowment for capital because you want to keep the building going, the structure going, the beast going. But Harvard, to be accused as a Yale, I would never, I'm not a Yale, I'm a parent of Yale.
Yes.
I would never accuse Harvard of trying to stop progress or to perpetuate stereotypical progress. They're doing the opposite.
So this is the funny thing about being both the embodiment of liberal snowflake culture, the academic lounge at Harvard, while also being the place that produces presidents and all of this stuff, because everything you've said, I feel, but also the endowment. I mean, dude, it's a multi-bazillion dollar. So Harvard can afford all of it if it wanted to. The point is there should be pressure and scrutiny on who they let in, because at the end of the day, despite all of those objections, where I net out is it matters. It's important. It has impacts on society. I have great fondness for that place. I do. And I have fondness because I believe that it can change lives. And that's why the stakes are actually worth arguing about.
And I feel as though from the position you're in, that you can change lives too. So it's very clear that when you've got a microphone and a platform, the responsibility that we have, many people, and you poo-pooed it earlier in this show. Hey, all you need is a computer and a microphone and turn on and you've got yourself a podcast. That worries me, because I need people to take their platform seriously, which is something we've talked about.
You are never going to Susan Boyle it.
No, I will never do that, because it's too important what we do. There's too much of an opportunity for someone to listen to what you're saying and to then act on it.
But I just want to make something clear to the executives who are worried about me, parents included. When I get on that stage, I'm going to sing my fucking heart out. And that's what's going to matter. It's not me wearing a hoodie in my ring walk. It's me showing up, doing a bazillion shows, and you ultimately saying to yourself, I'm glad we brought this kid to this country.
It's so awesome. Well, I'm glad that you're a part of it. I love the fact that we get to talk every day. People don't
Same.
realize we don't publicize it hours a day, thinking about what we're doing, taking it
All the
seriously.
time.
And that to me matters because it shows that we care as much as the audience does. And that's all I ever wanted from players. Just care. Just care as much as I do. Pablo Torre, we can't wait for your show. You're going to promote it at some point.
www.pablo.show. I waited till the very last moment to say the thing, but please go there. You'll find out what I'm actually doing.
You win.